you know all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I know this type of stuff. I don't know how to be a parent. I'm sure that I probably won't make some mistakes, but I've never raised a child before. So I was always like, oh, don't worry, thank you, I appreciate it, but we'll see what happens when the time comes.
This is a big weekend. Mom gets a lot of stuff in the house that I live at, and I'm all for it, okay? And I'm sharing too much. I'm going to get myself in trouble. My wife's birthday is like a week before my birthday. So she not only she takes my birthday, she does. And then Mother's Day is before Father's Day. And I kind of feel like she takes my Father's Day, but not really. Look, this is a huge year for me because it's the 10th anniversary of me being a dad. Pretty excited about it. And for those of you who didn't know, my wife and I can have a 10-year-old this year. Boy, and we've got a 6-year-old going on 25-year-old daughter, and this is the life in the Berman house. And my guest today, similar arena, he's got an 8.5-year-old son and a 4.5-year-old daughter, and we're calling this the Father's Day edition, and I'm joined with Dr. David Levine. Do you want me to call you Dr. Levine? I can call you David at this point, right?
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
That's cool. We're there, aren't we? No? And David, where's home for you?
Home is Scotch Plains, New Jersey.
And I think it's better for you to, if you don't mind, can you walk through your credentials and how you got to being a doctor and who you work with and all that good stuff?
Sure. So thank you for having me. My name is Dr. David Barry Levine. I'm a pediatrician in Scotch Plains, New Jersey for Atlantic Medical Group. I grew up in Marlborough, New Jersey, about an hour south of where I live now. And I guess the simple story is I had a nice pediatrician when I was a kid. It looked like a fun job. I sucked at math. My parents were accountants, so I knew I was never going to follow in their footsteps. I went to Rutgers undergrad. I went to NYU for med school, and did my internship and residency at Yale University Children's Hospital in New Haven, Connecticut. And then I decided it was time to start working. So I came back to Jersey for the job, and I've been here ever since. I will be in about a month from now, it'll be 16 years that I've been a practicing pediatrician. And as you pointed out, about half that time I was without a child, and half that time I've been with a child. My son is 8.5, and my daughter is also 4.5, going on 24.5, just like yours. They're completely different ball games, both of those kids. And I'm very happy I had the boy first.
Oh, me too. Me too. And my son is my rule follower. And my daughter's like, is that a rule? Oh, okay. I'll show you. With your rule.
Yeah. My daughter has already perfected the side eye, the devil stare. She already lets you know exactly how she feels about everything that we do, good or bad.
So when you get into this, and pediatrician all the way, right? So you get into this. Why pediatrician? And let me hear again. Like those first 5 years that you're out, is it exactly what you thought it would be?
Luckily, yes. I mean, I knew people who actually started in general peds and ended up switching to specialties because they got bored with it. And 16 years in, I'm not bored with it at all. I kind of always wanted to be a pediatrician. And when I went through all my residency and when I went through med school, I wasn't dissuaded. I much prefer dealing with children to adults. A lot of my friends would agree that they liked the kids, but they couldn't stand the parents. And I don't get too bothered by the parents. And now I am one. My career is basically bisected by parenthood. I spent the first half of my career so far without children and the second half so far with children. So the first 5 years during that time, it's a lot of just hoping I'm not making mistakes. I'm just trying to figure this thing out. Like I know the basics of this, but I have not had a chance to do it for real. But in hindsight, it's almost like, I almost feel like I was a bad doctor during that time because I wasn't a parent. And I know lots of good doctors lots of good pediatricians who are not parents. But after becoming one, I I just felt like I was just shoveling BS to parents for a while, because I could tell them what I learned about sleep training and dealing with children and tantrums and stuff, but I never had any practical application of it until I became a parent. Now I can have a very different conversation with parents, and I can talk about my own experiences, which I hope lends a little bit more credence to what I'm saying, and that I'm not just telling you to do this. I did it too. I'm not special just because I'm a pediatrician. In fact, I probably have made more mistakes because of that. But if I can handle this, you can handle it too.
And yeah, like, look, why do we want Dr. Levine here for the Father's Day edition here? And maybe you can, yeah, I mean, I think it is courageous being a doctor. Like it's almost sad now, to be honest. There's so much liability. On your
there's
side.
that, and misinformation and stuff doesn't make our jobs any easier.
And like, I would never come into your office like, oh, well, I read this on Google.
Many people do.
Right. But yeah, exactly. Like, everyone thinks that they know. I'm sure when they come in, everyone's a doctor now. But, in the spirit of keeping the show moving.
Yes.
I felt like there was a very particular reason we wanted you to join us today. And you and I have been trying to have this conversation for about a year. And so I'm happy it's finally happening now. Talk me through your son and when he's born, and just take me back to that special time and then what happens from there.
Right. So, when I found out that my wife was pregnant, we were obviously very excited. Found out it was a boy, and no offense to any female listeners out there, I was very excited. I'm an only child. I'm a man. I was like, all right, I know what to do. This is my sex and gender are coming out here. And I was fine. I was happy the whole time, no issues whatsoever. And a lot of parents, in my years as a pediatrician, would always say things like, oh, you're going to make such a good doctor, such a good dad. You're, all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I know this type of stuff. I don't know how to be a parent. I'm sure that I probably won't make some mistakes, but I've never raised a child before. So I was always like, oh, don't worry. Thank you. I appreciate it. But we'll see what happens when the time comes. So the pregnancy all went smoothly. My son came out a day later than expected, and was very healthy. But in the nursery, my son cried a lot, so much so that they actually brought him into our room, because we had put him in the nursery. We put him in the nursery to be fed overnight just so he'd get some rest. We had been we got to the hospital like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they brought him in because he wouldn't stop crying. So the next day, I'm sitting there with my wife, and I go over to the nursery because the pediatrician had come. I am not my child's doctor. I thought, at least in the beginning, that was a good decision that I made. I'm not going to take care of this child in any other way other than their father. But I had said to the pediatrician, I'm like, he really cried a lot. Like, is that bad? And she looked at me and she's like, Dave, he's 24 hours old. Like, he's okay. Babies cry. I was like, yeah, of course. Babies cry. So we got home. Breastfeeding was not so easy for my wife. It was actually very difficult for her. And she had a little bit of the baby blues, which are very normal time. The first week or two, women can get very, emotional and cry, but not because they're depressed. They're just the blues. And she felt that way. We had to get through a bris, which was a total nightmare. And I was fine. Like, I realized, oh, my wife needs me and I'm going to be there for her. And we made decisions on, what we were going to feed the baby and all that stuff. And then I took 2 weeks off, which coincided with my son's second and third week of life. I had planned it that way. And I was also able to take paternity leave. So my wife was going to take maternity leave. She was going to be off for 3 months. I was going to be off for month 4, and then he was going to go to daycare. Those 2 weeks, though, when I was home with my son, things started to develop inside my head. I was becoming more aggravated at my son. I did not like being around him. He cried a lot, in my opinion. And I felt like he was only crying when I was trying to take care of him and not when other people were trying to take care of him. And I started to have this feeling like something was off inside me. And I Googled postpartum depression in dads. And I found like one or two articles, nothing much. I actually found Michael Lewis, the author of Moneyball. He wrote a bunch of essays when he was a new dad, which were on Slate, and he had collected them in a book. And I found a quote that basically said that maternal love is ingrained, but paternal love is a learned behavior. And so I bought that book. I'm like, oh, this feels like what I feel like. And I bought the book, and it was really just a couple of quotes. It wasn't as validating as I had hoped it would be. But meanwhile, I'm starting to get worse. I'm snapping at not my wife, but at my son. I'm yelling at him, and I'm berating him like he's going to ruin my life and my marriage and all these things. And I'm also starting to get really dark thoughts in my head. These thoughts that I did not utter to my wife, and I really didn't share with anybody. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I realized what was happening. But I was beginning to have it was almost, I describe it like I was reading a book, but it was a horror book. And it was every time I turned a page, something new was developing in these images and this story that was developing in my head. So I'm home for those 2 weeks. I get through barely. I'm not sleeping because I'm trying to be 50-50 with my wife. We take turns at night with the baby sleeping and us sleeping and feeding. I'm trying really hard to do everything 50-50 so she can get some breaks. She can go and run an errand. I can run an errand, all these things. But my wife is actually trying to sleep, and I'm not. So my wife would go to bed at 9 o'clock, feed the baby. I would not go to bed at 9 o'clock. I'd stay up until midnight because I didn't want my son to wake me up. So I wait with him till he wakes up, and then I feed him. But then by the time I get him down to sleep and I feel comfortable that he's not going to be waking up, sometimes it's after 1 o'clock. Then I'm going to bed. My son is waking up at 3 o'clock, and then I have him at 6 o'clock. So I'm getting, on a good night, 5 hours of sleep. And then I go back to work. And now I'm working my regular shifts, my 9 to 5s. I'm doing my calls. And I'm also still trying to be this 50-50 dad. And things are just getting worse and worse. I'm getting more and more angry, more and more aggravated. I'm not outwardly depressed. I'm not crying. I'm not doing any of those things, but I'm not happy. And on like Thanksgiving, I said to my sister-in-law, I'm like, I made some allusion like, this really sucks. And then we get to about week 7. And that weekend, my in-laws were supposed to come and watch the kid. And my wife and I were going to be able to just run some errands, go to a movie on I think it was a Saturday or Sunday. So this is a Thursday, and I'm driving. I leave the apartment. We lived in Jersey City at the time. And I must have said something really nasty that morning. And I leave, and I get on the phone to my wife, and I'm in the car. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't really screw things up that bad. And I remember it was raining. It was a bad connection. And I said to her, are we still on for this weekend? And I thought I heard her say no. And that was it. I just started bawling my eyes out in the car. I'm like, I finally did it. I finally pushed too far. Everything that I was worried about is happening. My wife's like, no, I didn't say no. I said yes. She starts crying, and she's like, Dave, you need to get some help. And I said, we need a baby nurse. She's like, I will take care of that. And she's like, you got to take care of you. So I managed to keep myself together. I get to work. I call my good friend who's an peds ER doctor in Philly. I get him on the phone. I almost never get him on the phone. And I tell him what's going on in not extreme detail, but a little bit. And he's like, he has 2 daughters at this point. And he said, I understand. I didn't maybe feel the way you felt, but it was really hard in the beginning to figure out how to be a dad. And he said, but do you have some people you could call? Because it sounds like you really do need some help. The group that I worked for at the time did have a behavioral therapy section. I found somebody who worked with postpartum depression. I had looked up postpartum depression groups, but they were all for moms. It all said for moms. They were always during work hours. Yeah.
So yeah. This is just to take people back. Okay, this is 2014, right? So
yeah,
the news, by the way, in 2014. As we're going through COVID and all sorts of other crazy, I think Ebola was like the big global health crisis in Africa. And we read about it it didn't really register here. Robin Williams, Joan Rivers both passed in 14. That's how kind of long ago this is. So I can imagine you, I don't even know if you were on Google or what it was, but I can imagine you searching for something back then. And like you said, not running into what is now called PPD, right? Paternal postpartum depression. I'm sure that term wasn't really.
No. And there's so much more online than there was back then.
I'm sure. And even to this day. And so look, obviously one of the reasons that I wanted you to come on is because you're not just a doctor, you're a father and you're a man. And these are all parts of your identity. And I'm sure they get split apart at different times. And even from what I could research, and this space so much more than I do, I couldn't find like an established criteria even today for PPD in men. Is there one? Have you created one?
No. So you're absolutely right. There is even in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual that psychiatrists and the mental health field uses, there isn't really there's depression. There is certainly no specific definition of postpartum depression as a diagnosis, especially in men. And although there are doctors that are working on this criteria, it doesn't exist, which actually causes a lot of problems, because if you can't define something, it's hard for people to search that out and feel validated by this definition. In our field, some parents have children who have these strange disorders, and even though sometimes it doesn't matter in terms of treatment, just to know that there's a definition out there, that this has a name to it, is so reassuring and validating to a family. Even if there's 5 kids in the world who's ever had it, at least they know this is a thing. I'm not just seeing things. I'm not making this up. Like my child has something. And for many dads and for many men and for a lot of women, the fact that there is this thing that we call postpartum depression, paternal postpartum depression, it's difficult for a lot to accept, for them to believe that the non-birth parent can go through the same things as the birth parent, because they associate postpartum issues with specifically the mother. And unfortunately, that is not the case.
So is there, like, when you sit with your friend and he's sort of sharing, you need to go see someone on this, does he have a name? Is there an expert in the space?
I didn't know anybody in this space. I know some of them now, but at the time I knew nobody. I just got lucky that there was somebody in my group who would work with me, who had heard of postpartum depression in dads. But as I discovered in my years since, I'm always the first person that anybody's ever met who has had it.
And in your mind, I guess, the last thing we want to do is zip all the way back to 14, but how much of this for you is you're spinning in your own head because it's very real, but you're also a doctor? Like, is that part of this? Is that like swirling in your head? You're like, oh wait, people are supposed to come to me for help, and here's the place where I need help in a space that I'm swirling a little bit. Did you feel any of that?
At the time I didn't, but you're absolutely right. I mean, I want to make sure people understand that it didn't just happen to me because I happen to be a pediatrician. It happens. It's a 1 in 10 dads is diagnosed with this. And because fathers and men in general don't really talk about our feelings, it's probably closer to the women's numbers, which are about 1 in 5, 1 in 7. But being a pediatrician absolutely made this worse for me, because I was sweating things that most parents would never have sweated at this point. And the other things were not bothering me, like, a diaper, this, or, a pooped or this, whatever, like that didn't bother me at all. The way the kid, like, sometimes, hiccuped or vomited whenever he ate, I didn't, but I brushed all that stuff off. But I was definitely seeing my son in a way that was inseparable from my job. And that definitely made, and even just like I said in the beginning, I think I went into this really thinking like, I I've got this. Like, these are things I should be able to do, and he's not doing them. So not only am I feeling like, oh my God, do I not know anything? I can't even do this with my own kid. But I also felt an enormous sense of rejection by my son for not, for me loving him and him not showing me anything in return.
I mean, you sort of touched on this already, but I want to just go a little deeper. I mean, I do think as a gender, we are getting better with our emotions. But maybe that's through my own lens, like, I guess when you have a show called The Courageous Podcast and you're talking every week about people being vulnerable, then I'm clearly in a bubble that's close to, hey, let's have a real conversation, whether it's don't lie to yourself or just keeping it real. But you're closer to that reality. Like, do you think we as a gender are getting any better, or you think we're just keeping it all inside?
I think we want to get better. My feeling is our generation of fathers wants so much to be more a part of our child's lives than our fathers were. And I don't say that as a negative. Like, my dad was a great dad, but he had a very narrowed view of what his responsibilities were, just like my father-in-law. He didn't, changing the diapers, being up at night, those type of things didn't really matter as much to him as other things. And he's like, well, that's what mom's going to do, and this is what I do. And our generation of dads really want to be much more involved. I call it the 50s dad versus the 50-50 dad. The 50s dad was like, yeah, I'm here to earn the money. I'll barbecue. I'll do some of those things. I'll make a man out of him and that kind of stuff. But the woman's job is the actual raising of and rearing of the child. But our generation is more, we want to be 50-50, but unlike mothers who have generations of women to fall back on to say, this is how you do it, this is what worked for us, we don't have that. We don't have dads that we can go back to and say, Dad, what did you do in the situation? When I was going through this, my father was like, but he's okay. I said, I know that, Dad, but do you understand what I'm saying? My father could not relate to me. And I, as I've talked to more people over these last 8 years, I realized my story is not as unique as I would think it was. I'm just unique in that I talk about it.
I don't think you're alone on this. My dad saw the world differently, and their roles were different, right? The roles back then were just, it wasn't better or worse or right or wrong. It just was a different time. And I feel like I'm trying to design a life where I can be more around for my kids. What my mom did really good, by the way, growing up, is we rarely ate dinner until Dad came home. If we starved, we starved. But we tried to have dinner with Dad. But like, that was pretty much it. So I could see why Dad would be like, well, he's okay, right? Like, the emotional capacity, because of everything else they were just trying to do on their role in the house, was different. Right.
And when you don't have generations to relate back to, it makes a difference.
So, look, this is not a small thing that's happening. I mean, you are in this trailblazing space, and I know you said that the story, you realized the more you've gone down this path, the more people are experiencing the same things that you're feeling. So much that this October at the American Academy of Pediatrics National Convention, which I think is happening out here in California, you're speaking on this topic. Is that correct?
Yes. So I applied 2 years ago. COVID has kept kicking this down, for the last 2 years. But yeah, they thought it was a big enough topic to have it addressed, especially by one of their own.
And I know October is not exactly tomorrow, but Can you give me high level what you hope the end takeaway is for the audience?
Well, yeah. No, I mean, my belief is, most of us men, a lot of dads do not have their own doctors. They will get care when they need to, go to urgent cares, that kind of stuff. So there's nobody else to screen a father for these issues other than, I think, the pediatrician. So what I hope to get through to my group, to my people, the pediatricians out there, is that it is on us to screen any parent who comes into the door for signs of postpartum depression, whether that is a man and a woman, two women, two men, adoptive parents, grandparents. Any parent can have this. Being a new parent is an enormous stress and strain on any life. It's of course a wonderful thing, but people don't talk enough about how hard it can be in those first couple of months. And if a pediatrician can screen these people and realize that not only can I screen them and find them, but I can refer them. Like, there is treatment for this. And I work for an organization that's our sole purpose, is to get people, is to let the medical community and the world at large know that you're not alone. There's a way that you can get help, and you don't have to suffer in silence the way that the only reason I'm here talking to you is because I was lucky enough by want of my job and where I work to get help. And that shouldn't be the reason that men are able to get help and dads are able to get help. It shouldn't be just a luck of circumstance. It should be, oh, I know about this thing and I can get help for it.
And when you say you got help, in your mind, maybe take us back. I mean, was it restricted emotions? Was it depression? All the above?
It was anxiety that led to depression. And I did like months of cognitive behavioral therapy to really start to see that these emotions that I was feeling were just, they were incorrect versions of reality. That what I was seeing, it was such the opposite of what everybody else was, that I had to start to admit to myself that I wasn't the genius who could only see the truth. I was the one who was not seeing the truth. And it took a lot of work. Obviously, sleeping helped quite a bit too. But I just had to start admitting to myself that maybe I was wrong. And the therapist told me later on, she's like, my biggest problem is that I tell myself stories that I believe are true, but they're not. And they're always horror show. They're always horrors. So I don't tell myself like rainbows and butterfly stories. I tell the worst versions of these, and I have to stop doing that. And I've passed this on to parents for the last couple of years. Whenever they get really nervous or in their heads, I always say to them, you cannot predict the future any more than I can predict the future. You have to focus on what you have now in front of you. You have to realize that you can get help, that feelings are not actions, that just because you thought something really terrible doesn't mean you did something very terrible. We're all human beings. We all think a lot of things, and that doesn't make us bad people. And the shame that a lot of dads feel and are made to feel, I mean, I can show you the things that have been said online whenever dads have come out and said, it was hard for me, from other men and from women too, that shame that we carry with us. That means that when you have shame, you think you're the one who's wrong. When you have guilt, you realize I made a mistake and I feel guilty and I can change it. But with shame, it's so deep in your soul that you're afraid to even acknowledge it. And that's what the very few dads that I've screened who have ever admitted to having problems, that's how they've expressed it. I feel ashamed. One dad I remember, he said, my wife is up at night nursing. I'm not. She's at home with him during the day. I'm at work. I have not earned the right to feel this way. And that's where my shame is. And I had to tell him, like, it's not about earning it. Like, you're a dad and you're a new parent, and you shouldn't feel that you have to earn how you feel. You feel this way, and that's okay. Well, I gave him numbers, and months would go by, and I would check in on him through his wife, and eventually he started to feel better. But he was one of the few dads to ever verbalize to me exactly how I remembered feeling years ago.
David, this might seem like an odd one. Look, there's been bad shit that happened in my life. And when it happened, I mean, obviously I was mad, I was sad, I was angry. And now I look back at those moments as, like, I call them negative blessings. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you had to choose, and I, like, remember Men in Black where you would hold up that
right, you could just forget.
Right, like, would you would you wish you could go back and not sort of have this emotional or depression or anxiety? Or are you like, I'm so happy that like, did you find your purpose through all this? Maybe that's a simpler way to say it.
Well, I have, and it's doing this type of talk with you, which is why I appreciate it so much that you've invited me to speak about it, because it's something that my wife realized too when I first got an opportunity, because my son was like 1.5, almost 2. And through multiple connections, I was asked to talk about my experiences on the old Charlie Rose show on PBS. But in order to do that, I had to tell my wife considerably more than I had ever told her before. And after she stopped crying and said, I'm really sorry that you felt this way. I would never have thought less of you. I would have just given you a hug and I wanted to be there to help you. She realized that there may be something to be gained from me telling this. I might never find out about it, but if I get the story out there and somebody hears it, maybe then they say, oh, I felt this way too. And that validates me and maybe I can get help. And that's, like, would I prefer not to have gone through this? Yeah. The truth is I didn't want to feel this way. I don't feel good that I'm one day I'm going to have to explain to my kids that, there's the reason why daddy went on these and did these things that you find or that you've heard of, or that you've come to conferences that I've spoken at, is because of this, what I went through. And it's not you. It wasn't that you did something. It was me. And I need to warn them when they become parents that dad had this, and that doesn't mean you're going to have it, but you could. And I want you to know that I'm here and I can help you and we can talk about this stuff. I would have preferred not to do that, but if something can come out of this, like people say, if I can take some terrible thing that happened in my life and I can turn it into a positive eventually, then it's okay. Everybody goes through stuff. Like you said, I was divorced. I went through a divorce. If it wasn't for that, I would never have had a happy marriage now. Like I had to go through that hell in order to figure out what was wrong and what I did wrong. And I did it better the second time. I wish I could say I did it better the second time with the second kid, but I still had postpartum depression that time. It just wasn't as bad. I will never be trying for a third, so I'm never going to know how that goes. But I think I truly believe that I'm a better doctor for being a parent. And I think I'm better for having gone through this because I think that it allows me to connect to a new family, because in the beginning, I'm connecting to the parent. I'm not connecting to the kid. And I hope that as time goes on, I connect to the child too. But the parent's got to be on my side. If I have the parent on my side and they believe me, then I can help them and I can help guide them, and they'll take what I'm saying as, that I have their best interests at heart, as opposed to, oh, that's not how he is, or they're just giving me something to get me out the door, or not listening to me. And I want every parent to always feel that they're listened to, whether what they're saying is correct or not correct. It's what they're worried. And I need to be able to hear that in order to figure out, is this something I need to be worried about, or can I just kind of calm you down about your worries?
So this concept of paternal postpartum depression, PPD, as it's now known, which is kind of new territory. I wonder if there was another PPD that sort of is another part of this story. And the PPD I'm talking about, I'm making up. I call it perfection projection disorder. And perfection projection disorder is us projecting that our lives are perfect on social media. And right. And like, here's like the pretty picture. By the way, I took 74 pictures before you saw just this one at just this angle. Mm-hmm. How much in your mind is perfection projection disorder? I'm making this stuff up, by the way, like a thing.
Oh, I think it's a huge part of this. And there's, I think it's, and I don't profess to know the way that other countries talk about families and parenthood, but as well as I do that the United States has the least parental leave of any country. We have the least safety net for new families, for women to be able to keep their jobs and stay on the job, for fathers to be able to do the same thing. And I think we do put forth this notion that, and women know this very well, you could be an A+ mom and an A+ business person and do everything perfectly. And what that tells women is, if you can't hack this, that's your fault, not society's fault. That's your fault. I see the exact same thing with fathers. Every image that you see of dads, of new dads, no one ever talks about this. And so when you don't acknowledge that the beginning is hard, and that like you say, that the perfect photo of the family is one of 500 photos, and that's the one where everybody was smiling, the truth is much more gray. And we don't want to talk about the gray. We want everything to be black and white in this country, and it hurts our parents, and therefore, and when it hurts us, it hurts our kids. Because let me tell you, we all know that depressed men don't do very well, and depressed dads do not raise the best, do not have the best families. They don't raise the best kids. And if we were supported with even just with a little bit of truth that perfection is not only impossible, but completely unnecessary, I think it would take a lot of the burden off all families to feel like, I mean, you have 2 kids too. All the pressures to, get them the extra training in this or sign up for that. Whereas our parents were like, oh yeah, you just go play with your friends after school and you go do a sport or 2. Now it's 3 or 4 sports plus trainers plus this. It's too much, and it's hard to resist. It's really easy to get wrapped up in that stuff. And it's no different when you're a new parent.
I can't imagine that this is going to turn out well for the kids too when they're older. I don't
No, there's lots of data that fathers that are depressed lead to children that are depressed, either gender. I mean, daughters or sons both have problems. It obviously messes with marriages. There's a lot more domestic violence. There's a lot of things that happen when there's depression in the father and does not get treated.
So a lot of this, I also wonder, and I'm just going back to my little, perfection projection disorder. I don't think we realize, and I'm just as guilty, that there are times where I'll post a picture on Instagram and it brings me joy, and I'm trying to be a beacon of positivity here. And even I don't realize what that picture is doing to when someone else receives it on the other side. That, I always tell my kids, when you compare, beware. This is a Birmanism 101. When you compare, beware.
Yeah.
But we do it as adults too. And when we compare our lives, I guess the point of negative self-talk is very real. And then you amplify it, or by bottling it up, I guess makes it worse if you're not sharing this with others. So you had mentioned when your firstborn came out here about 9 years ago, how long did you keep it in? 8 weeks, 12 weeks?
About by week 7, that's when I couldn't keep it together anymore. But I didn't get better until it really took the first year. I mean, to give you an idea, so my son was born 10 days before my first wedding anniversary. On our second wedding anniversary, at dinner with my wife, she cried the entire dinner because the first year of our second year of marriage and my son's first year of life were miserable for her. And she didn't understand why I had caused so much misery, because I was not willing to tell her what it was that was happening. It wasn't until later that she understood that what I was going through was much more profound than she had originally thought.
All right. So it's, like I said, this is the Father's Day edition, and Father's Day is going to be here on Sunday. Is there a Father's Day gift out of this? Like, what do you want for all the fathers that are listening to this?
Well, first off, of course, happy Father's Day to everybody. And second is, so the day after Father's Day is actually a sort of holiday. It's called International Father's Mental Health Day. That was started by a colleague of mine named Dr. Danny Singley, who's out in San Diego, and a guy named Mark Williams, who is in the UK. And it was meant to be a day where fathers are acknowledged, that where fathers' mental health is acknowledged as a real thing that we need to be able to talk about. So what I want dads to hear is that we're all in this together, that we all are there to support each other, and that if you're not having the best time in the beginning of your child's life, or you're 5 years into it and you've really never really acknowledged or come to grips with this feeling that you've had, you're not alone. And that you need to find somebody that you can talk to about this. Whether it is your spouse is unlikely to judge you the way you think that they're going to judge you. Your best friend is probably not going to judge you and may even say, you know what, dude, I felt the same way. I've heard that from a couple of my friends who've told me, like, they've said things like, for the first 6 months, I wasn't the best father either. They won't say that they experienced quite the depths of what I did, but they'll say like, yeah, I wasn't at my best. And you'll be amazed how many people. So not to get too off the path, but I'll compare it to this. So in between my two kids, my wife had a miscarriage. And when she had that, she mentioned it to a friend who then said, oh yeah, I had a miscarriage too, who never had previously said anything about this. And I realized, as I've spoken to more mothers and things like that, that once you hear somebody, like, no one talks about it until somebody has it. And then all of a sudden, all the women are like, oh, I felt I did it. It happened to me too. It's like this little secret that they don't want to share until you become part of this group, which is actually a really big group. And so I want dads to feel the same way. Like, you're actually part of a really big group of men who just want to do their best. We all want to be good dads. And we don't all have a good definition of what that is. And we really don't have a good definition of what it feels like when you're not reaching whatever lofty expectation you've set for yourself. And that you can get this, you can work your way around or out of this feeling by talking about it, acknowledging it, being validated that you have it. And if you need it, there are people who can help you. Like the group that I work with called Postpartum Support International, our website is postpartum.net. There's a whole page set up for dads. There's dad chats. There's all this information out there to validate and to allow for treatment of dads who have this issue.
David, I was going to ask you, is that where you want to send people that are listening?
Yes.
Today?
Yeah. www.postpartum.net. And on Twitter, it's hashtag Dads MH Day for Dad's Mental Health Day is what we do on the day after Father's Day. And that's where, starting in July, I will be taking over as vice president of postpartum support. I'll be the first male to be in that position. And part of that was we really want to make this big push, which is why I'm speaking at the AAP in October, to really get the medical profession to understand that that this is a thing that touches on all aspects of medicine that men touch, specialties, their wives, their children, all these things, and that there is an organization out there that can help you get help for your patients.
David, before we wrap, have you been able to study what actually is happening inside a man's body? Is there any changes that are happening in a man's body?
There are. There are much of the same changes that happen in women's bodies. There's plenty of hormone levels that shift around. On a biochemical level, we mirror our spouse a lot with this. And if you're an adoptive parent, there are still things that kick in that allow you to be nurturing towards a child. The thing about hormones and about the biochemistry is it's not absolute. So we don't, unfortunately, have a test or anything where we can look at and say, you have too little testosterone or too much testosterone or not enough oxytocin or some of these other biochemicals in the brain that they can fix. It's a multitude of factors. As you pointed out, me being a pediatrician and having some of that burden on me probably played a role in this, as many fathers have expectations and the roles that their culture or their family life or their religion plays in this. There's such a multitude of factors. You don't even have to have had previous mental health issues to experience this. But there are a lot of changes. There's a lot of imprinting. There's a lot of things that go on in your DNA when you have these type of depression and the way it can transmit later in life, even onto children, even onto your own genes. But I wish that there was something I read where someone found the key to all of this for either males or females, but there isn't. All we know is it's a real thing that people go through. They go through it more in the United States than they do in other countries. And there is treatment. There is an acknowledgement that this is a real thing. And there's a lot of dads groups too that are working really hard to to get the word out there to men that you can have this, it's okay, and you can get help.
I imagine with time and, of course, money, someone is going to continue to, maybe it's you, someone's going to continue to do the data and do the study on this to see, like, can they crack the code on how this happens, why it happens. In the meantime, I'm excited for your book. You're hot and heavy on the book. Do you have a title that you want to share?
I mean, it's either right now it's between Concerning Dads or The Forgotten Parent. I'm just hoping maybe somebody out there is an agent with a passion for this that will see the utility in a story like this. But I wrote it during the worst of the pandemic when a lot of us had time on our hands. And I hope one day to be able to actually have it out there for guys to just be able to pick up anonymously where no one knows, and they can just read it and be like, okay, this takes such a weight off my shoulders to know that this is a real thing, and that if this person was able to overcome this, I can overcome it too.
I love everything about that, but the anonymous part, like it shouldn't have to be.
Right. It shouldn't. Right? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But I'm dealing with the reality of of the world I live in, and not the one I wish to live in.
Oh, Dr. David Levine, happy Father's Day. I know that you're going to have a great time with your kids, your boy, your girl going on 24. I feel the same way. Thanks so much for joining us. Come back again and see us and let us know how your story's going, will you?
I would love to. Thank you very much.
Thanks, David. See you, man.
Bye.